Sports Social Podcast Network.
And now another no-brainer money-saving tip from Progressive.
Marcus, what happened?
I was changing my oil and I spilled some on the floor.
Oh, well, use these $50 bills to wipe it up.
Perfect. Got any more?
Yeah, take a couple hundred.
Stop. Instead of using money, use an old rag. And here's a better tip from Progressive on how not to waste money. Don't pay too much for car insurance. Drivers who switch and save could save hundreds. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello, I'm Eddie Gibbs and welcome to the post-conference presser here on AI Pro Plus. Now, I'm in for Dave Davis and this is the third podcast I've done for him this week and I can't wait for him to return. Now, I was the original host of this show or its previous incarnation before Dave took it on. And in between us, sandwiched in was Guy Drinkel. And I did the show a couple of times with Guy Drinkel in the past as well, but it must have been about 3 years ago. So welcome back, Guy.
Yeah, we all miss Dave Davis making us do other stuff, don't we?
I know, it's really weird coming back to doing this show. So even doing podcasting in general this week and having to cover his shows, it just everything else has to get dropped. And there's a pile of admin stuff, so I'll probably still be on that like you until stupid o'clock tonight trying to get all that done. But we digress. Let's have a look. Klopp has been speaking to the media, as is his way, on the Fridays, and it's ahead of the Brentford game, which is tomorrow, 12:30, the early lunchtime kickoff at the Liberty Stadium in London. And there wasn't really too much in this press conference, which is kind of ironic seeing as we've decided to cover it anyway, but we shall crack on. And the first question he was asked was about Sven-Göran Eriksson and the news that broke this week about the Swedish manager, former England manager, obviously coming to Anfield for this Legends game in March. And Klopp said it was a great decision with lots of people involved to make it possible. Now, this is where we show the power of Liverpool, I think, Guy, and this is where we get to have these heartwarming moments where our fan base and our club really step up to the plate and just do something good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very strange because obviously when the news broke about his illness a few months ago, it's weird for me because probably post 2006, I wasn't really big into England. So Sven's probably the only England manager I've really given a toss about, to be honest, which is quite strange because, I mean, Capello, I obviously knew the name, but, well, I was Liverpool. It was more, I'd rather Liverpool win a throw-in than England win a tournament by then. So Sven was basically the two chances I had watching tournaments, and 2002 was probably, even before some Liverpool games, was probably my first introduction to football. So for my club to have that in common with my first England, and probably only England manager, really, it is a really nice moment. And now you hear, like, when Dave does his pods and he always reminisces about Sven's Lazio teams. And I don't think many people knew he was actually a Liverpool fan. So for him to get that moment as as the manager of is he manager or is he just part of the group? I'm not. I think he's kind of part of the group. I think Kenny might have stepped aside for this one as he usually does it. And I think it's with John Barnes, Ian Rush and John Aldridge, I think was what I heard. Yeah, so at least he's part of it as a group, and I'm sure he'd love sharing the stage with Liverpool icons like that as well. Probably adds to it, if anything. So yeah, it's really great, and I'm guessing the match is in the next international break, and they're always fun environments. But when he walks out, I'm sure he'll get a hell of an ovation as well.
Yeah, I imagine there'll be a tear to his eyes for sure. And I'm like you, I didn't realize, and I don't think you do realize a lot of the time who these managers support during their career span. I mean, it's kind of one thing you would think they would kind of keep it fairly closeted as much as they can when they're certainly competing against the team that they support at times during their career. But they're professionals and they do their job. And I mean, I had given up on England well before Sven-Göran Eriksson, so it's for me, it's even. I think I was done after Italia '90. That was me, and the Graham Taylor era was the end for me. So I'm showing my age a bit there, but I do know what Dave's on about when he looks back at that Lazio team, because I think anyone would have had Sven after Lazio. He was the big thing at that point, you know what I mean? And obviously the chance never really materialized for timing wise a lot of the time with these managers, and it's kind of eerie that we're talking about now as Klopp's about to step aside. It's one of those, it's all about timing on these jobs when they come up, because if Klopp was to have gone, say, 2 years ago, it would be a completely different set of managers we would be talking about now as potential Klopp successors. So it's all about timing with these things. And for Sven-Göran Eriksson, the time was obviously just never there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Was Houllier 98?
That was the
core manager thing.
Yeah, that was the one opportunity probably for Sven. But David Moyes at the time and Rick Parry, they seemed to want to stay loyal to Roy Evans at that time, and the whole dual manager thing began. And to be honest, that was probably the right move when Houllier took control at that time for what the club needed to do. You know what I mean? So and maybe Sven would have done a similar job. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't think nobody had traded Houlier's time, would there? I don't think.
How could you?
And if Sven left England, I don't think we would have traded Rafa at that time as well.
No, that's it. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. So Klopp was then asked about the players that were going to be back for the Brentford game, and he said Salah's back in training, so effectively that makes him available. Connor Bradley's back, Alisson's back, Gomez is back, and obviously Konate's back from his suspension as well. So it's not a bad 5 players to have returning to your squad there.
No, it could be worse. It could be worse. It's weird because I think the original timeline with Mo was if Egypt got to the AFCON final, he probably could have played, couldn't he? So I imagine if the cup final of the Champions League rather than the League Cup was last week, I'm guessing Mo probably could have played anyway. But considering, I know he touches on it later on about rushing people back, but if we needed to rush him back, say last week for a must-win game, I'm guessing he would have been able to play. But as we know, Mo is a machine, and this is probably one of his actual only injuries in his Liverpool time, and it wasn't even in our bloody shirt.
I know, it's ironic. I mean, I was actually getting my hair cut this morning, speaking to the barber and saying to him, he was asking if I thought Salah would play tomorrow or whether Salah would make the final. And it was one of those interesting ones because we were talking about injuries, and you were saying, do you think Salah will stay? Do you think Salah will go? Tony Evans has written a bet in his column today on AnfieldIndex.com, which has kind of lit the touch paper around Mo Salah. And one of the things with Salah is these so few injuries, but you always have this fear when someone starts picking up any sort of hamstring injury. It's just so weird what can transpire from that, especially a player like Salah who's been so fit. You know what I mean? It's hardly ever injured. And to get this hamstring injury, let's hope it's just a one-off and there's no reoccurrence of that. Now, the point you made there about players being forced back early, Klopp was asked about that quite early in the press conference. Obviously, in main regard to Trent, but obviously Dominic Szoboszlai and Thiago as well, all had been injured before, previous injuries, and they've been brought back into the only for reoccurrences. So Klopp was asked about that, and he was very clear, Guy, I thought, in the press conference to make the point that they never force a player back early. And I've always thought it would be Klopp's final decision. But Klopp seemed to imply it was the player's final decision, which actually I find kind of odd because players want to play. So I can't imagine why it would be the player's final decision, or do you think I picked that up wrong?
Quite possibly, yeah. I'm guessing it's all a decision in unison, really, with the medical team, Klopp, coach and staff, and the player. But, I mean, it's ultimately the player who probably knows best what percentage towards 100% they actually are. Obviously, you can do as many tests as you want. You can look in training, and you can look fresh, you can look sharp. But I think what we saw with Trent in the two performances before, well, the half game against Burnley and the game against Arsenal, he just didn't. He may have been fit, but he certainly didn't look sharp in either of the games, did he? So it's a shame, but I think Thiago's the obvious one because we were obviously losing the Arsenal game anyway, and I don't think a very rusty Thiago would have changed too much. So I think maybe rushing back might be the wrong word for it, but it's the phrase we're obviously using in this context. We want to be overly protective of someone like Thiago, whereas Dorm, I don't think he ever got any injuries at Leipzig, but Trent, we know, is a machine. Like I think he's had one big injury in the last couple of years. Other than that, it was like COVID that's kept him out the longest time other than injury. So I think players like Trent, you can just kind of go, yep, he'll be fine. Dom, probably the same because he's obviously machine-like. But players like Thiago, it was a bit weird seeing him come on in a game we would literally could still be playing now, and I don't think we would have scored in. But it's it's one that we, as fans, we just can't really comment on without any knowledge, can we? We obviously can look and go
pure speculation.
We looked at Trent and went, he's probably not fit. Well, I was very angry after the Arsenal game, so I was hoping he wasn't fit because he was awful. But yeah, again, as you said, speculation. It's just one of them, but it's just kind of annoying. Because Dom was so good in that Chelsea game, picks up that injury, and now he might miss the cup final. I think Klopp said he might be back. Trent's definitely missing it by the looks of it, but at least we've got Conor Bradley back, which we didn't touch on. But he's back in training. Obviously, we don't know his mental state, but if he's back in training, hopefully he's ready to play. But yeah, Thiago's the real kicker, I think.
Yeah, probably. And one of the things that Klopp did say there was that it's funny that they're asked. He did pick up on that. He'd read this about them rushing back players too early, but he says no one's criticising them over when they reintroduced Jota or when they reintroduced McAllister after their recent injuries, and that all went well. So it's almost kind of making that point you just did about no one really knowing. It's just you kind of go with your best instincts and what the player says, and it's almost like lighting a touch of paper and hoping your hand doesn't get burnt.
Basically. But it's because we have such a recent history of so many injury-prone players, it's just a real pain in the arse, isn't it, really?
Yeah, so next he was asked about the Brentford game specifically, and he described that as super tricky. Obviously, they have Ivan Toney back, they have their guys back from AFCON, and as everyone knows, certainly Liverpool fans to our horror, they're very, very good at set pieces. Klopp then said we have to be at our best to beat Brentford. He was then asked about the two-striker thing and how rare it was. Klopp was keen to kind of emphasise that he didn't see it as being that rare, that teams do play with two strikers still. Now, that seems to be one of these things where on paper, when team sheets and things like that are brought out, Sky and BT Sport, they never, or what they call TNT now, they never really put the formation quite as it turns out. You know what I mean? Everyone's keen to put a traditional formation horizontally, starting from the goalkeeper, the back four, the midfield, and then the forwards. But no one really puts two up top anymore. But Klopp seemed to be saying it's not that rare. So that's kind of implying that perhaps more teams do actually set up with two up top than meets the eye, or the way that football fans have been kind of educated to think in recent times. Obviously, going back to the 80s and 90s, two up top was the main thing. He said that really, for us, it has to be about depriving Toney of getting the ball and stop them winning set pieces. He described Toney as being very, very clever with his body. Now, let's not beat around the bush here. Brentford are only going to play one way, and we've seen that way, and we know what's coming. So we've had a whole week of training this time. So let's hope that Liverpool can be in a good position to counter some of these things that Brentford are going to bring to the table.
Yeah, I think it's really important that Konate is back because, albeit he was a bit stupid against Arsenal, we have seen him in these physical duels and he will beat players to the ball when he's playing well. And obviously the alternative would be Kwanzaa in this situation. And I think Kwanzaa's obviously had a really, really excellent season. But if there's one human striker in the league you don't want him to play against, it's probably Ivan Toney, obviously Haaland being the one who isn't human. He's so crafty, is probably the word. He's just so clever. His link-up play, I think, as Klopp alluded to, he will just hold the ball up, win fouls, and we know Brentford's threat from set pieces. Whereas Kwanzaa, I'm sure he could deal with that in certain games, but I'd rather have Ibu, or I think Matip has struggled against him in the past. But if Matip was fit, you'd probably want someone a bit more experienced in there dealing with someone with Toney's skill set, physical attributes as well. So Konate being back it's really good, and hopefully he doesn't put in a slightly brain-dead performance like he did against Arsenal. But Toney is their key player. And
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry,
You go.
Yeah, I was going to say that the importance of him and the way it's changed the way Brentford have played so quickly. You know what I mean? It shows how much they were keen to have him. Obviously, Brian Mbeumo's been injured for ages now, and that's their other main threat. It's completely playing without Toney and Mbeumo has completely transformed the way Brentford were playing. And now he's back. They seem to have reverted back to where they were. I mean, they're not doing as well in the league this year as they were last year. They're not shocking as many teams as they were with the style of play. But you can see that the Toney fact, even though the results have still been mixed, you can see that Toney gives them that real pivot and that real strong focus of where they play their attacks for you. And it's almost like, oh, we're back now. We've been kind of playing at 70% all season, but now we're back. We're 100% with Brentford, and unlucky for Liverpool, they've had to go to Brentford and face Toney while he's back rather than during the suspension.
Yeah, it is a bit of a pain in the backside that we have to play actual Ivan Toney, but I think that Man City kind of just pushed them aside the other day, so we know who we're competing with in the league. We have to do something similar. We have the defence, we have the individual defenders to deal with someone like Toney. And the thing is, it's not just Toney that was missing. You mentioned Mbeumo was missing there. They have no fullbacks at the team at the minute.
Yeah.
Obviously got Reguilon in on loan. But they've got injury issues at right back, Reguilon at left back. The centre-backs have been taking turns getting injured. Seems like the midfield's the only one that's kind of been set, and they've even had injury issues there. But like, if it's Toney, I think Wiss has just come back from AFCON, hasn't he? Because I think he was in the third place playoff.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Then Maupay. It's probably not the easiest front three to put together, but with Wissa being back there, and he's probably like the sleeper pick because he loves a goal against us for whatever stupid reason. I don't know what we've done to him, or he might be a United fan or something like that. But it's just him being back kind of more of annoyance because teams haven't dealt with him because he was injured, then went to AFCON, whereas Toney, at least you can kind of prepare for him. But so, like, modern day Shane Long against us, I don't need that nightmare fuel in my life.
Now, one of the other quotes that Klopp mentioned during the press conference was his team's competing with us at the top. We'll think that this is a game Liverpool may struggle with. Now, it's an easy conclusion to come to because Liverpool have always struggled playing at Brentford. And he then went on to talk about Joe Gomez's adaptability and how it's a really good example of how a player can play across the three different positions in defence. But that he also was keen to stress that precedes even Klopp's time at the club, which is quite credible that Gomez has outlasted him. I think he's the only one who has. In terms of Liverpool's team news, he was asked about Harvey Elliott and saying that he's knocking on doors. There's been loads of coverage across Anfield Index and across all fan media this week about Harvey Elliott and how well he did in that game against Burnley. And Klopp was keen to stress, we forgot how young he is. He's incredibly important and he knows that. He's a joy to work with and he's been exceptional in training this week. Now, this is the point I really wanted to touch on with you because we've seen all this week. We've had, and I've asked it on the two podcasts I've been on this week as well about Harvey Elliott and how you fit him in the team, because I just can't find a way to do it. I mean, even on the podcast I did with Ben Boxack the other day, it was very difficult to even see. Let's just say that Salah's going to be on the bench for tomorrow as an example. Well, he's going to be your first go-to if you need an attack sub. So, and I can't see Endo not starting this one. He's good in the air. We're going to need that physicality. So where does Harvey Elliott come in?
The bench. I think you sub him on at half time. That seems to be the way that it goes. It's a strange one, isn't it? Because we obviously, throughout history, we do have those super sub players. And obviously it's a bit different for Elliott because, as we say, he's still young. I think, is he 20 still? It's just... Weirdly, he might, if it is Xabi Alonso who comes in, he might be one who actually benefits is the wrong word, but he may fit tactically better into another manager's starting style. Because as we said, Elliott does make impact from the bench. It's just when we see him start those games, he's not really an 8. He doesn't have the running power of someone like Dominic Szoboszlai. He doesn't really have the defensive awareness of someone like Curtis Jones. But he probably will never have the running of Dominic, but he may get the awareness of someone like Jones because it took him 2-3 years to get there as well. But say if Alonso comes in, he's obviously, I think he plays 10s rather than wingers. It might suit someone like Elliott. But in terms of the short term, I think he's just got to be that usually first person off the bench if someone like Salah isn't on there. And I think, as Klopp said, he's still young. That's fine. He doesn't have to be starting 30, 40 games a season. He's done that in the Championship. He's done that for us. He started, I think was it 1 season ago where he started basically all the games, didn't he? Or he featured in the most games. So he's getting a lot of minutes, regardless if they're the bench or the start. And we've seen it. I mean, Phil Foden's probably the better example. People were questioning Pep Guardiola if he was the right manager to get Phil Foden into the player, and we're seeing this season Phil Foden's probably been City's best attacker. I know De Bruyne and Haaland have been injured, but he's been their big silver lining of what was a struggling season before this massive run that went on. So I think we just got to heed patience with someone like Elliott, and maybe he peaks at 22 like Curtis Jones did, or starts his peak at 22 like Curtis Jones did. Not everyone has to break through at 18 like Trent and be world-class from day one.
Yeah, I think so much as the club are managing his expectations and the players not getting frustrated, then I don't think you have as big an issue as the media would like to portray that there is. You know, I mean, Klopp was keen to stress there's certainly no knocking on any doors and campaigning to be starting games and stuff from the lads. So I think we just have to take that at face value. The final thing that Klopp was asked about was the Trent and Dominic Szoboszlai injuries ahead of the cup final. Obviously, we've heard that Trent is ruled out, and Klopp was keen to stress that Dominic is a maybe, but he was also keen to point out that he hasn't given a second's thought to the cup final yet because we have this Brentford and Luton game before that. So again, I don't know if I take that completely at face value that he's not given a second's thought to the cup final, because as soon as you get to
he used Conor Gallagher as the example, didn't he? He was thinking about
it. Yeah, so I don't think that's quite 100% true from Klopp that he's not given a second's thought to the cup final, because obviously that'll be a massive thing for the players as much as it is for Klopp. So they'll be turning their attention to that for sure. There'll be half an eye on it. But I think that it's easy to focus on the cup finals. Fans, we're both going. It's going to be a great day. Liverpool are hopefully going to get their first silverware of the season and the first for since they won this in the FA Cup the last time. But it's very hard as a fan, I think, to not be too focused on the Premier League while you're still in the hunt for the Premier League, where you're still in the title race. So if they miss the cup final, it's almost like, okay, that's fine as long as they're back for the Man City game. Is that the way you were thinking? It's certainly the way I'm thinking.
Well, I mentioned it to Carl on Scouted, and then literally half an hour after we finished recording Scouted, it broke Paul Joyce. These two are probably going to miss the cup final. I was like, great, smashing. Cheers, Paul. But I think we argued in that, just get them ready for the City game, because even if they were like 75% fit, maybe less so Dom, because we've not really seen a rusty Dom, but we have seen a rusty Trent, and a rusty Trent is someone you can't really put into a big time game like a cup final. So if the idea is get them for City, get them warm for City. I'm not sure, is City? No, we have plenty of games between, don't we? So just get the rust off both of them, get them up to fitness, figure out where the hell Trent's going to be playing, because now we have 4 other options at fullback, don't we? So maybe we can do the Trent in midfield thing. Who the hell knows? We all kind of want to see it now after years of not really considering it. But Bradley was so good. Gomez has probably been our best fullback this season. And Robbo and Tsimikas are back, so we don't need to rush Trent back, but we need to get the rust off him before that City game, because he is one of the players who can hurt City and has hurt City in the past, and hurt City this bloody season. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same. I don't think we need Trent. I would love Szoboszlai back for the cup final, because we saw what he did to Chelsea the other week. But we don't need Trent to beat Chelsea in the cup final, but we may need Trent to beat City in the league.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. That would definitely be the way I would go. Let's turn our attention to tomorrow then, and the lineup and what we expect to happen. Dave always does it on his show. He always says, "Has anyone played themselves in or out?" Now we know Trent's out, so that's one because he's injured, and we just discussed Harvey, and we can't see him starting this one, even though he had such a good second half against Burnley last week. But we know Mo Salah is potentially fit again, so that could be a change. Is he coming in from the start? And if so, who would it be for?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I think the first question is what we do at fullback, because we obviously have the Luton game midweek, which I forgot about.
I know we like these players, but I can't see Mo Salah playing at fullback, pal.
Well, it's always time. Inverted fullback all season. Because I think more, do we want to give him a game before the cup final, and would we rather, what do we need him more against? I'd probably say we need him more for Brentford, because of the Luton games at Anfield. We know our record at Anfield. Brentford 12:30, it's going to be minging. I think the front three should be more right. Darwin and Jota, them two just kind of play where the hell they want, because it doesn't really matter. But Moore's probably the only one who has a set position. I think Diaz has obviously been good. Gakpo's been, well, Diaz has been good at times and kind of anonymous at times. But Darwin and Jota, I think they're the two that have more so carried through the Moorless spell. So I'd probably have them three ready for the cup final. Then we could bring on the weapon of Diaz against a tiring Chelsea later on. And then midweek, you can probably bring Diaz, see what Moore's like, because Moore, if he's not now broken with hamstring injuries, we know he can play 3 games in a week. And maybe you have to protect Jota and Darwin a bit more. But for this, I'd bring Moore back in straight away. And then at fullback, if Bradley's ready, I want him ready for Chelsea. So I'd play him in this one and then see what happens midweek.
Yeah, I would agree. That's exactly how I would do it as well. Now, let's look at Brentford's threats before we close off. So they're 14th in the table. They're 6 points clear of the drop zone, and they have a game in hand. I don't think they'll end up in relegation trouble, really, now they have Toney back. And whilst they're still inconsistent, they have enough to beat the teams in the bottom half, I would think. Overall record this year, they've won 7, drew 4, and lost 12. It's actually quite a lot of games that they've lost. They're on 25 points, but at home, they've won 4, drew 3, and lost 5. So they've actually lost more games at home than they've won, which is quite surprising when you think that sort of their home ground was a bit of a fortress as well. Their key threats, obviously, Ivan Toney's the standout. We spoke about him. And Mbeumo, who's caused us problems before, he's still out. But Neil Opie's in good form. He scored. He's on 7 goals now, and he scored quite a few recently. The set pieces, obviously we've discussed that. They're a big team. And I think Dave Davis was saying to me when I spoke to him the other day that they actually have some sort of bonus scheme for set pieces, which is incredible. I don't know if it means winning them or how they take them or anything, but while most teams have goal bonuses, Brentford apparently have set piece bonuses, which kind of surprised me. I've never heard of that before.
Would have bankrupt Stoke back in the day.
Yeah, so I don't know in what way they get paid or how they do it, but a team to have set bonuses for set pieces, wow, incredible. So there's that, and of course, if they do get a result against Liverpool, Thomas Frank is one of the names that has been linked to this Liverpool job. It's not one that I heard Jan Molby speaking about with Trev yesterday, and it was very much that a couple of people have speculated that he would be the guy, but even Jan, as a fellow Dane, doesn't think that Thomas Frank's really in the frame. But you could see it just like last week where Alonso got that result for Bayer Leverkusen against Bayern Munich, and the noise just intensified. Could that happen again? Do you think there'll be more noise around Thomas Frank if he gets a result against Liverpool tomorrow?
Oh God, yeah. Front page of whatever crap newspapers, successor beats master. Like, oh God. No, but you can see what, like you mentioned it in the part of the intro. Like, if it was maybe even last year that Klopp left, I think Frank would be higher up, wouldn't he? Obviously, because Brentford have had such a weird season this year. It's probably put his name kind of in the background more so, but if he was coming off the wave of 2 back-to-back really good seasons with Brentford, he'd probably be more prominently named. But yeah, I can't really see it. It's such a big... We've done that jump before. We've done Swansea to Liverpool, and it didn't work. I'd say Frank's probably more experienced and more ready than what Rodgers was back in the day. But again, Rodgers was then replacing Kenny. He's not replacing Jurgen Klopp, who's certainly the greatest in modern history. He's one of the greatest in our overall history. It's I think that's too big a jump, really. But I do like him. I do like him as a manager, but I think Wissa might keep me up tonight. Players just do have a knack. Just have a knack of scoring against us. It just always bloody happens. Like Shane Long ruined my childhood. It's just,
But we used to just go and buy them, didn't we? That used to be the way. If someone scored, was like Benteke or Lallana or even Darwin Núñez. You know what I mean? It's like
it worked with Mane. It worked with Mane. That's all.
Mane, of course.
The ones didn't, and Darwin is working at the min, but still weird. Good Lord. And backup.
Let's close out then.
Yeah.
Let's close out then by having a look at what how we think Liverpool will line up. So I'll have a crack at it and see how much you agree with me. I think it'll be Alisson in goal, which I think is an easy decision now. He's back from his flu. I think we'll see Connor Bradley at right back. I'm still thinking it might be Joe Gomez, though, because of the aerial advantage. But I think that Liverpool will try and take the game to Brentford. So I think it will be Connor Bradley at right back, Kanate and Van Dijk. Then I think Robertson will be retained. I think Joe Gomez will be the unlucky player to miss out for the starting 11 here. And then I think your midfield will be Endo with McAllister and Jones. I don't see him changing that. And then up front, I think we'll see Salah on the right. We'll see Núñez. We'll see Núñez in the middle, and we'll see. I think we'll still see Luis Diaz on the left, and I think Jota will miss out, which does seem harsh there on both Diogo Jota and Joe Gomez. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking this is the warm-up game for the final. So I kind of want the team that plays here to play the final, and then we can rotate a bit in midweek. So I think he will play Robertson, but I'd prefer Gomez at left back, because then I think it still allows us to do the inverted into midfield thing that we've done all season, obviously, where I don't think we'd want Bradley doing that, and we know Robertson isn't really suited to doing that. So I'd want Gomez at left back and put Bradley at right back and see how that works. As I mentioned, I prefer Jota over Diaz, but yeah, I think it wouldn't surprise me if it is Diaz. But at the same time,
I think that'll just be. I think that'll come down to a pace thing. I think that's all that's about. I think that's all it's about. If he's got Salah, he's got his clinical finisher back. You know what I mean? And that's why I think Jota misses out.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And if you want to rest one of them midweek, bringing Jota straight back in. And then he can fight for his place in the final. Probably makes a bit of sense as well, to be fair. So it wouldn't surprise me. But I think I'd rather Gomez at left back over Robertson. But he's never dropped Robertson in his life, has he? So it wouldn't surprise.
And as is the way that the show always ends, we predict score and scorers. So I'll let you have first crack at that.
I will go 2-1 Liverpool, because 12:30 is never easy.
And who's getting Liverpool's goals?
Ooh. Darwin and Endo.
Wow. That's not one I saw coming. I expect us to concede 2, and I expect at least one will be a set piece. I'm swithering whether to go for a 3-2 Liverpool or a 2-2 draw. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw, which won't be the most popular scoreline as people are listening to this podcast, I know, but that I just see that. I see this, and I think you said it. I think I heard you say it on a show that I think this was Liverpool's hardest away game. I don't think they've got a harder one than this left this season. I think the games at Goodison and Man United, I expect us to win both of those. I know they won't be easy, but this one, it's just a curse about this game that I just can't get out of my head, and I just don't see it going our way for some reason. And I think that the toll of these injuries are starting to show now on Liverpool in terms of performance more than result. Those XG numbers and the things that are kind of the underlying stats around games. So I'm going for a draw in this one. I think it'll be 2-2. I think Darwin Núñez will score, and if Mo Salah does start, I expect he'll score as well. So that's my prediction. I think it'll be a really tight affair. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. So a little bit different to you there.
Well, I hope I'm right.
I think everyone listening hopes you're right. So we'll call it a day there. Thank you to Guy for joining me. Maybe a few years before we're back again. We do not know. It's just one of those things when people are on holiday, we try and muck in and make sure that we deliver the shows. I guess you will be podcasting again today, Guy. The day's not done for you yet. You'll have something on the EPL Index site.
Literally after this call's done, I'm talking to Dave about the Premier League. So yeah.
So we'll see if Guy can remember the prediction for this game that he gave on this show, and whether he gives the same prediction when he does it on EPL Index.
I've done it today. I did today with show as well, so I've done it twice.
So have you given that prediction twice now, or have you changed?
Well, I said 2. I said 2-0, and then I changed 2-1 last minute. So.
Oh man, the man of many predictions. That's quite funny. So, like all good Bond movies end saying James Bond will be back, we're delighted to say that Dave Davis will be back. He will return next week, and we'll probably just be back tinkering away behind the scenes. So thanks for listening, everyone, and until next time, up the Reds.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.